Welcome to Where Are Our Rabbis Now? In celebration of Beth Or's 40th anniversary, we're excited to welcome a dear rabbi who was, I believe, the third rabbi officially to serve our Beth Or congregation. Rabbi Rebecca Lillian, Brucha Haba'ah, welcome back to your old stomping grounds, at least virtually. It was so exciting to connect with you not too long ago in anticipation of this conversation that we are having together, and to put a face behind this famous Rabbi Rebecca that I had heard so much about. So we're just so thrilled to have you here and to find out where you are, what you've been up to. But I think what we would love to do is let's you know what, everyone's asking the same questions. I was going to reverse the order and talk about your time here, but let's start from where are you right now? Tell us who's next to you. I think that there may be some people on this call who were not there when you were at Beth Or. So let's just start with, hello, welcome. And where are you?
Well, we are in Copenhagen, Denmark, which is the hometown of Jan, who I think almost everybody that's here, if not everybody, knows us. But if you don't know, if there's somebody who doesn't or doesn't remember, Jan is from Copenhagen, and we moved to Malmö in Sweden in 2011 because Jan got a job at the University of Lund teaching Yiddish, which is his profession. And we figured it was the closest we would ever get to living in Copenhagen, where his whole family is. So we decided to take a leap and do it, and having no idea how long we would be here. And now we are here. We moved from Malmo to Copenhagen because it became possible to do that. It's about an hour away from Lund, where Jan teaches. And I am working now with a congregation called Shirat Safon, which means the Song of the North. So I am a lot north of Miami right now in Copenhagen. And we've been doing everything on Zoom only for 2 months, but we're one of the few synagogues, I think, anywhere that actually had services live in July and August and over the high holidays. So the last time we did something live was Simchat Torah. They were not normal services. They were, services trying to protect from COVID, but we did meet then. And since then, everything's been online like everywhere else. And yeah, that's where I am.
So we're going to ask you a little bit more about that in a moment, but I want to pause to bring us back to when you started your time here at Beth Or. What year did you begin at Beth Or?
2004.
And how many years were you here?
4. Unfortunately, I was sad to leave. It was a really great experience. A highlight of my rabbinic career. I still talk about Beth Or all the time.
And what was, well, you can tell us why you were leaving, why you had to leave after 4 years, and when you wanted to stay and everybody wanted you to stay.
I didn't have to leave. I chose to leave because it was really hard for us, Jan and I, to have a long distance relationship. And in the 4 years that I was at Beth Or, Jan tried very hard to find a good position somewhere in Miami or South Florida, and that never really happened. And finally, after the 4 years, not only did he not find something in Miami, but the position he had in Chicago was improved, and it really did not make any sense for me to be there anymore, unfortunately. And Chicago is my hometown, so I was also going back to friends and family, but it was a bittersweet leaving for me.
The rabbi that was there before you was who?
Right before me, Russell Fox.
Yeah. So Russell wasn't there very long. Did you, I guess you didn't have that much time with him, but did you have any advice or help from Rabbi Rami How did you inherit this congregation from him? You know, because I think that Russell Fox was only here very short, like a blink of an eye. So it was really, you were on the heels of Rabbi Rami.
Chef, sorry, we're just looking at Chef. He's here in Copenhagen at the Little Mermaid. Come on.
Oh.
I just have to say, this is changing the subject, but where's Irene? Irene has to be here somewhere. Hi, Irene. When I see Shep putting himself in Denmark, it just makes me think, Irene, of your beloved Tom, may he rest in peace, where one time you had a party and he had everybody say a fantasy vacation place, and he took a picture of us and put us in that place. And that was like long before Zoom and everybody could do that. It was like this magic that Tom worked. So I thought of that right now when I saw Shep do that. That's like one of our fun moments. What was I supposed to be saying though? Oh,
I love
Rami and inheriting the synagogue. You know, I have a story that I can tell you now because it's however many years later, and so it's probably okay. But when Rami first left Beth Or, you know, when a lot of people knew Rami because we met him at conventions. I didn't know him well, but I knew him from conventions, and I thought whatever synagogue he founded must be a really cool and wonderful place. So I saw when Rami left, I saw that you all were looking for a rabbi. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool, but who in their right mind would want to follow Rami Shapiro at the synagogue he founded? That's a recipe for disaster. So I just didn't think about it. So the rest is history, I guess. And then when I saw it open again, and it happened to be exactly when I was really looking for a job and was willing to move, I saw it again and I thought, well, I don't have to not be Rami. I just have to not be Russell. So I think I'll apply.
Okay, that's good. Between us.
100% between us, please. But
Did you have any interactions with Rabbi Rami?
Yeah,
afterwards?
We spoke on the phone a few times. I mean, he was very, very good about it was kind of about being respectful of being hands off since he left. But I think it was a very respectful way of me not wanting to change too much at first because I wanted to respect what he had built, and him not telling me how to do things if he saw that things were a little different. But yeah, I mean, we never really met in person after then, but we spoke on the phone and we emailed. Yeah.
Was there anything specific happening in the world or in the nation during your time here? And if so, how did that impact your vision or your sermons?
Well, there was a huge thing going on in the world in that 2004 was only 3 years after 2001. And I think that was influencing everybody in the country in ways that at the time we probably didn't even know. And then there was the Iraq War, and we had a congregant who had a son who was in the Marines who was in Iraq, and so I think they're not members anymore, are they, the O'Hares? But I know that influenced me a great deal. I would say it probably changed me a great deal because I've always been an anti-war activist person. Eliza, oh my gosh, hello, honey. I am so happy to see you. I'm sorry. So
I love that. That's great.
So I've always been sort of an anti-war activist type person, and I had gone to anti-Iraq war demonstrations, and then to have congregants that were coping with not only having a son in the war in Iraq, but coping with the general anti-war sentiment. I learned a great deal from them and from the experience, and how to be everybody's rabbi, and how to give support to somebody even when I'm in disagreement with what's happening politically, and yet they're caught up in it. So I think that really affected a lot that general atmosphere of the country being in the war and it being so close to 2011. And the hurricane. Oh,
Oh, yes. For sure. I am sure you had plenty work on that one. You were
well,
there at a good time. You had a lot going on.
it was just unbelievable. It was my very first Yom Kippur. Thank you, Linda. I mean, it's funny because I talk about that when I talk to people about my experience in Miami, and yeah, that was unbelievable. That was the first Yom Kippur, and we had to cancel the service because in the middle because we were operating with this. We were following the Miami-Dade school system with when to cancel anything, and so when they were closing schools, it was decided we would close the service. And yeah, we had the takeaway break the fast. People were incredible. People rushed back to the synagogue building and took the break the fast food and packed it up so everybody could stop by the for some of right break the fast to go and take it home to prepare for the hurricane. I had never had any experience with a hurricane whatsoever before. None, zero.
Well, it was a good one to
That was
start.
very that was very intense. Yes.
So with all of that was stuff that was going on in the world, and because you were following on the heels of a founding rabbi, nonetheless, Rabbi Rami Shapiro, um, did you have a vision coming into it for Beth or was it sort of let's just move this along, keep everyone together?
Um, I think that my vision was first of all, I really saw it as a mutual learning experience together, that we were building something together. I mean, I was very much formed in the Reconstructionist vision when I went to the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, that the main role of a rabbi is a teacher and facilitator and not a huge leader. I was attending a lecture today online and I heard somebody talk about a rabbi being in charge of a particular synagogue. And I thought, well, that sounds like a terrible synagogue. If the rabbi is in charge, I mean, the people have to be in charge. And so my vision was really to, it seemed like Beth Or was a really fabulous community, and that what I thought that I could offer and what my vision was is to bring the type of Yiddishkeit of Jewish culture and Jewish spirituality that I have and plug it into the synagogue in a way that would make it grow even more. I mean, one of the things Rami said to me when we spoke is he always saw Beth Or. He wanted people to feel that Beth Or was their spiritual playground and that they, if it wasn't fun, then it wouldn't be inspiring. And I really took that to heart, and I tried to create things that were fun and enjoyable, but deep and lasting, and encourage people to take charge of them so that we could have more, because it was a small community, and if everything originated with me, that would just be impossible. And I think we succeeded because I went to various different things that I didn't initiate, but that were pretty remarkable at the time. So that was
Do you
really,
remember some of those things that you implemented with the congregants?
well, what I miss still were our Shabbat mornings, because we did not have a service on Shabbat morning unless there was a bar bat mitzvah. And we had this combination where Shep and Linda taught yoga, and then I taught Talmud, and I loved it. And then sometimes people would bring our lunches and we would have lunch afterwards. And to me, that was a perfect Shabbat morning, because I don't love Shabbat morning services. I think they're often too long and people don't always know what they're doing. And so people feel insecure. And I got to learn from somebody to do something I totally don't know how to do, which was yoga. And then I got to teach Talmud, which I love, to people who I don't think ever looked at Talmud before, because usually people don't do that. It's a commitment, and I really love that, and I miss it because I haven't done it anywhere since. So there was that, And we really, the family education was also really a wonderful thing, where instead of having the families that were right around the bar bat mitzvah and also right after, instead of just having the kids learn, we had families learn together. And I would learn with the parents while the teachers were teaching the kids. And that was very enjoyable. And I got to meet a lot of wonderful people that way too, and get to know them in a way that I wouldn't have done, because sometimes parents just drop their kids off, and this way they stayed, and we did stuff together.
Was Jen Burst teaching then too?
Yeah, of course. Jen Bush
Hasn't stopped.
Jen Bush was the
Can't get
head.
rid of her.
She was the vice president for education. She was on the board. She was my lifesaver. She was everything. Anything I did, I could not have done without Jen Burst.
Oh, I've inherited that. I also am blessed. Thank you. We passed it on.
Yes.
Rabbi Rebecca, tell me, what is, when you think back at Beth Or, you mentioned the community's involvement, and how they supported one another. But what do you think Beth Or's greatest asset was at the time, and probably still continues to be?
People. I mean, really, it was the people, it was the community. I mean, I have now joined different communities since then as either the rabbi or just, as they say, a Jew in the pew. And Beth Or is the most welcoming and open-minded community. And what I think, I would say what I think Beth Or's greatest asset is, as I remember it, is a lot of communities are welcoming if a person changes themselves to fit the community. They are what they are, and they're not open to changing as a community. And if a person joins, either as the rabbi or a member, it's on their terms. And what I found so unusual in retrospect about Beth Or is that Beth Or was pliable. And if a person comes in an open-minded state, the community was also in an open-minded state. And there was room for experimentation, room for new types of people, room for the community to itself change in response to the people that were there. And I think when I reflect on Beth Or, that's really, I think, its greatest asset. And sometimes Yen and I talk about the difference between Beth Or and other places we've been where the community is small. And we just think that, people at Beth Or seem to have a real sense. I mean, the word community gets thrown around a lot, but like a real sense that a group is a living organism, and for it to function, it has to also be willing to be open and to change and not be afraid to experiment. And that's what I think when I see the people that are here today. It's a lot of the people that still have those characteristics, but it's probably self-selecting, because I have so many wonderful memories of people, and then you're the people. So, but still, yeah, that's what I think.
Well, they're still showing up, so that's a good thing. You must have done something right. What was, I guess in the same token, can you think back on what was Beth Or's greatest challenge?
Demographics.
Meaning?
I mean, I know that one of the things that we talked about back then, which was already 2004, was attracting young people and young families. And I think that like when I'm thinking specifically about not young families, but younger people who were probably like the age Eliza is now. But young people. I met a bunch of young people in Miami doing different things. I was part of the interfaith worker justice group, that went to Immokalee to support the farm workers and all of that. And I met some really cool people that way. And then they would say, "Oh, I'll check out your synagogue." And they would come once or twice. But for them, it was a schlep because they did not live in Kendall. And they couldn't imagine joining a community that was so far away, I think. And I think the bringing in people like that, no one wants to travel an hour for a 1 hour service. That's just reality. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges.
It's so interesting. I think that, that same challenge has still, been with us and still been our constant thorn in the side that we grapple with and try to overcome. Maybe with our virtual technology, we'll be able to make our way out of it in some way. When you think back, besides the hurricane and the war, do you have a standout memory for you that either makes you chuckle or warms your heart?
Sorry.
Okay, I got the chuckle one.
I have so many memories. I'm going to say something that is a chuckle, that is not one specific thing. It was just a cultural difference. And Karen, where's Karen? When I first came, and I would do guided visualizations, and whenever there was a storm predicted, for me, a scary storm is a blizzard. That will always be. And I would do a guided meditation. And I would say, imagine yourself safe and warm. And Karen would tell me, you don't want to be warm. You want your AC working. And I still think of that. It's a small thing, but I just think what we visualize.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I still think about it. I'll tell you what gives me the chuckle, the blessing of the animals. We had a blessing of the animals at the sukkah every year. And it was based on somebody asked, can we do a blessing of the animals? And I never had thought of it. I'd heard of the blessing of the animals in churches that it's on the feast of St. Francis, and St. Francis of Assisi was known as the saint that looks over the animals. And it seemed like Sukkot was the perfect time because we were outside anyway, and it was a time that people could bring their animals. And we had such a variety. Yes, thank you, Andrea. I forgot about that part. I gave every animal a Hebrew name based on everybody brought their animal and talked about their animal. And then every animal got a Hebrew name. And Shep and Linda brought their parrot. What was his name? His real name?
Plato.
Plato.
His name
right,
was Plato,
right.
like the philosopher, right?
Right.
What was his Hebrew name? I forgot.
Don't remember his Hebrew name.
Well, if I didn't, why would you? Yeah.
We'll have to ask him. He's with my son now. He lives there.
Wow. Paris lived a long life, huh?
Yes, we'd had enough, so now my kids have him.
Yeah, he was hatched in 1988, and he's going strong.
Wow. Wow. I wish dogs lived that long.
What was your proudest memory or achievement?
Oh. That's a really interesting question.
You want to think about it?
Yeah, I do want to think about it. I want to hear what other people think about that.
We can ask them too. Let's just wait. I want to kind of now shift to the present right now. And you mentioned where you are and the synagogue that you are leading. Are you leading the congregation?
It's complicated.
Tell us a little bit about that congregation and what you've brought maybe of Beth Or to it.
Oh, okay. I mean, that I can actually do, but I can talk about that. This is a congregation that is 20 years old, and it's the only non-Orthodox synagogue in Denmark, and it's now affiliated with the liberal movement in the UK, and I knew a lot of the founders going back 20 years because I would come to Copenhagen and visit. And I had sometimes served as a guest rabbi at different times. And it's a very long story, but basically their rabbi who was commuting from Israel um, every couple of months retired, and they invited me to be one of two rabbis. The second rabbi is based in London. It's very complicated. But then, because of the corona pandemic, I'm the only one of the two of us that's actually here. So I have sort of become the main rabbi, even though that wasn't the idea. But the things that we do are mostly on Zoom now. But I have brought what I've been trying to do. The people there are really, really nice people, but the service is not a service that I love. It's very English. I mean, the rabbi that was there was English. I mean, they're affiliated with the movement in England, and I wanted it to be a little warmer and people to loosen up a little bit, that sort of Beth Or type. And I've been starting to do that gradually, but just like when I came to Beth Or, I try to make changes slowly so that people feel like they own the changes and that I haven't brought in those changes. I was also working at a different synagogue in Malmo for many years, and I'm still affiliated with them. Although I have not been there since the pandemic began. I've been there once, and they don't like to do things online. So, or maybe I've been there twice since the pandemic started, but that's a completely different situation. I'll tell you about it just because it's such a different situation to anything that I've ever experienced in the United States. Um, it's called a united community, and that's how all of the Jewish communities in Sweden are. And it comes from a negative anti-Semitic past where the government of Sweden, when Jews first came in a few hundred years ago, the government only allowed a certain number of Jewish congregations to set up. So rather than set up three congregations in one city, they set up one community. And if there were different types of congregations, they would all be under the umbrella. Now, today, where there's so few Jews in the different places, it's not a bad idea, because then you have anything that's a cultural event, a concert, a movie, a picnic. You do it with everybody, and then you just separate for the services. And so that's the congregation that I've been with, because I'm part-time at both. Um,
Kind of sounds like Hillel.
it's sort of like Hillel, yeah, it's the same idea. But unfortunately, the Orthodox really do have the say, and they're not supposed to, but they do. And so they'll say things like, theoretically, and the Orthodox rabbi who's going to be leaving soon has been there 4 years. He's from Israel, and he and I became good friends. We worked together very, very well. But they would say things like, when we were still live in person, the Orthodox community was really shrinking for a lot of different reasons, because there was a split, really. And half you know how Jews are, half of them went to Chabad and half of them stayed with the Orthodox synagogue there. And he would say things like, when you have a Saturday morning service, you should really send your men to us, because we're having a hard time making a minyan. And, they require men.
Ouch.
And I would say, we'll all come to your service. We'll all come, men and women. Count us all, but no. So it's complicated. So that's how that is.
Wonderful. Maybe we'll ask Len a question or two. What do you think? Can we talk to you too? Can this be about both of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm wondering, what do you remember most about Beth Or that you might miss, that you can't have in Denmark, even though you're back home where you wanted to be?
Well, I really miss the beautiful garden, tropical garden which we're never going to get in there. Maybe if climate change continues and with the speed, maybe we'll get that in Denmark in a generation or two. But I love that tropical garden, and it was just so special to sit outside and sometimes have services there, and that was really very special.
Marcy's still maintaining our gardens, and they're as lush as, I'm sure they are more lush than they were then. Had all that time to go in. And when you see your wife as a rabbi in Miami at Beth Or, and now you're watching her evolution and her transformation to a rabbi in Denmark. What comes to mind? What of the community how have you seen her change over the years, and what of Beth Or do you think she brought with her?
Well, I mean, one of the things that has always been the case for Rebecca is the community, right? That's the essential thing, building community and developing community. And I think Beth Or was a really good fit, because there we could really Rebecca could take it one step further, because it's such a warm community, and it still is a warm community. So I think that's one of the key things there. And also, I mean, for myself, the Yiddishkeit, as a Yiddish teacher, it was really wonderful to be in Miami, because there was still Yiddish there. And I remember we got a big collection of Yiddish books that was actually in the building, in the Beth Or building for a few years, I think. And then I actually took over the books later on. So that was this kind of Yiddishkeit, and the old Miami Yiddishkeit, I think.
Well, it's been a few years, but it still is there. Still as beautiful as ever. Rabbi.
Well, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I have a question for Yen. I'm wondering. Hi, and it's great to see the two of you.
See you, Gail.
We love you and we miss you. Oh my God! But anyway, you're in our hearts forever. So my question is, what's the level of interest in Yiddish, in Sweden and in Denmark? And are these mostly people Jewish people, or are there non-Jews who are interested? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, what's so remarkable about it in Sweden is that Yiddish is actually one of 5 official minority languages.
Wow.
So there is this support from the Swedish government, and for both for teaching and culture, and you actually have Yiddish television shows for children on Swedish television. And so it's actually much more visible in Sweden than almost anywhere else, at least in Northern Europe and Scandinavia, that's for sure. So that's a special situation, and I think that really makes a big difference. And of course, I mean, the students are the usual mix of all kinds of, people come from all kinds of backgrounds, and Jewish and non-Jewish and so on. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't quite ready to do the question for everybody, but thank you, Gail, for prompting us, because I think everyone's chomping at the bit to ask the two of you questions and to reconnect with you. So why don't we, raise your hands, and we can one at a time, as organized as we can, have people unmute themselves and then remute after your question, so that we can hear it the best we can. So who wants to ask the first question? Second question. Yes, April. Oh.
Unmute yourself, April.
We have to unmute.
Hi, Rebecca. It's good to
April.
see you. So we joined together in 2004, and I'll always think of that in a special way. And you named my grandchildren, and we made some great seminars together when I was in charge of membership. And I'll always remember that. And I hope that you're very happy where you are. We think of you often.
Thank you, April.
Thanks, April.
Oh, could I go?
Ellen John. One sec. Ellen John.
Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Yen. So wonderful to see you. Um, when the question of one of your favorite memories and one of your accomplishments was very easy for me because I was volunteered all the time with the Torah school and had kids in the Torah school, and the kids just had so much fun with you. And we had Shabbatons at my house with the kids, and we took them to the Jewish Museum and Matis Yahoo. You all went to the concert, remember that? And so to me, I was just remembering we had at the time, things were different in Miami. We had a very vibrant Torah school with lots of teenagers that you just brought my kids in to the synagogue, and they still talk about you to this day and all the fun they had. Emily's actually on the Zoom. They still talk about you and just, those were wonderful times, and I miss them. And it was just, I don't know if I don't know if she's still there. She was.
Hey, I see her.
Hi, Rebecca.
Well, I would echo all of that, and because it was really a very special thing with I think you had a real attachment with the kids in the bat mitzvah program and otherwise, as evidenced by the fact that both Emily and Eliza tuned in today. And you mentioned the thing about it was a very trying time because of the Iraq War, and it was nice that you were so supportive of the families there. Our daughter Sarah ended up in Afghanistan, and we didn't get exactly the same kind of support from folks that were shown that the war had kind of wound on for quite a while by then, and there was a lot of fatigue. But one of the things I remember, I don't know if you can see this or not, was when we took our trip to Chicago, and there's Yen with us, who was our guide in Chicago. And Shep and was there, and I think Shep took the photo. That's why he's not in it. But that was all really wonderful stuff, and we enjoyed being with both of you for that duration.
And one other memory was the Passover dinner where you wanted to engage everybody, and I remember you acted out the plagues and was throwing frogs at everybody. Remember that?
I remember that.
Yes. Can I say one thing? Those kids at Beth Or were so great. I mean, when I think of the great times, I think about all the teenagers. I mean, from the bar and bat mitzvah families and the family education through the teens, and that was extraordinary. And now I have to tell another story. I hope Emily will allow me to, since it wasn't another story that I didn't tell at the time. But once we were planning a trip, we wanted to go to a weird theme park that was founded by evangelical Christians, like the Holy Land Experience. And then we didn't go when we were told that like the money was going to these missionaries. So then we wanted to go to another theme park. And I said to the kids, I don't want to go. There'll just be these long waits and everything. And we decided that I would be fake disabled. And they would roll me around in a wheelchair so that we could jump the line. And then I said, this is the wrong half of my personality presenting. I have to be the rabbinic part and say, no, it's terrible to be fake disabled. Emily, do you remember this?
I definitely remember trying to convince you to take us to the Holy Land Experience. So funny.
But
because it was getting reported that it was like a messianic situation, and they were misquoting the Torah everywhere to make it sound like we were all very into the idea of Jesus. And Chelsea and I thought it would be so funny to go so that you could teach us all the stuff that was wrong.
Yes, I actually, it's probably a regret that we just didn't go do it, and I use it as a teaching experience.
I mean,
but,
probably learned an important lesson about not wasting your money on evangelical causes and respecting communities with different abilities that day. So
that's true too.
All lessons.
Wonderful. Rose and Betty.
Well,
I see you.
Yes, it's Betty. Excuse me. I miss you and Yen a lot, Rebecca, and I'm glad I get to see you still on Facebook, so I know you're still there. And when you come to Chicago, you really need to come to Miami. But the thing I remember is just laughing. It just seems like we spent so much time laughing, whether you were doing the study or the chit chat, and especially I remember Purim, different Purims. Liz was at holidays last time, and we were talking about that Purim. And I remember watching the Academy Awards with you, and we were at Bonnie Rubel's. And I never had that much fun watching the Academy Awards before. So everything we did, whether we were learning, whatever we were doing, it just seems like we did a lot of laughing. And I miss that, and I miss you, and I miss Yen. Okay, did you want to say anything?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Asi.
Hi, so fabulous to see you and Yen. This is very, very exciting. I don't know if you remember taking a photo with my niece, Mara.
Yes.
I still have that wonderful photo. And so great to see so many people who aren't ordinarily on. It's just special. And I totally agree about the humor. It's like things weren't scripted. It was just laugh, laugh, laugh. I love that, love that. And so I wanted to circle back, not to put you on the spot, but to see if you came up with a moment that you're most proud of, that you wanted to reflect on. Did something come to you or not yet?
Well, a few things came to me, actually. One of them was, in fact, my relationship with the teens, because teens are notoriously what upset most rabbis.
Could you speak a little louder for some reason?
I'll lean into the microphone. I was, even before John and Ellen spoke, I thought about the teens and my relationship with them, because teenagers are notoriously difficult. I mean, for anybody, but also for rabbis. I mean, they're not the easiest group. And it was just, we had such a great connection. But I also thought of two things. One was very difficult, and one was very wonderful. So I'll start with the difficult. And this is really hard to say because there are a couple of people on here. I mean, there were a couple of very serious losses while I was at Beth Or, and I was really afraid because I had not been there very long. 4 years is not very long. 10 years is not very long. The older I get, I realize it. And this is not something that I'm proud of. I'm proud of the entire community and how we supported people who went through very difficult times, because that's not easy. That's just so painful and difficult. And the community, everybody stepped up. And I'm proud of myself that I didn't melt down and wasn't in shock and was able to get out of my own self-consciousness enough to try to be there. But that's when I think about the community, that's one of the ways that warms my heart very much. And I like to think I helped with that. A couple of things that are funny, and one of them, I have to say this, I never expected to write rock and roll music in my life. I'm sorry, Eliza, I have to say this, seeing you. And I just told Eliza in the chat that my nephew, who's now 23, who some of you met when he was 7 or 8 years old, has said to me, he loved that record that Eliza made, and he listened to it and he listened to it, and he finally admitted a year or two ago that Eliza was his very first crush, and he loved her. And he couldn't believe I actually knew her because he considered her, like a singer. So that was just one of those experiences I have never had before or since. I can't say it's the thing I'm most proud of, but I'm proud that I took the risk, because it's not how I always think. If you haven't heard the CD, it's even on iTunes, so you can just hear it. If you're on Apple Music, you can hear it for free. And the other really is bringing the sense of Purim to Beth Or, because I have a feeling that you never had an adult Purim culture before I came. And I think about just really funny things. Well, I remember, of course, at different times, Liz jumped out of the ark, and another time Eliza jumped out of the ark, and Eliza was the Sabbath queen. I just, but I think that understanding. I remember Jeff Kaminsky coming up and saying he was going to read the shark healing list. I just remember these things and I just crack up. But bringing Purim for grown-ups is something I like to do, and I think I succeeded with that one.
Wonderful, thank you. Eliza.
Hi. Well, I want to say thank you so much for being such an impact in my teen years. I know a lot of people saw me in my better days, but Rebecca and my mom and dad are gonna laugh. Yen too. Yen definitely knows I was not always easy. So thank you for tolerating me in the least. And speaking of Purim, I don't know that I ever told you this, but you really got me into Purim. I didn't know until you gave me all those opportunities, like how much fun we can have with this holiday. So just to share your impact, when I was in college, I was the president of Hillel, and I had the opportunity to make something cool out of Purim, and no one had really done that before at the college. So I had met someone in class who was in transition and wanted to come out in drag, and I hired him to rewrite the script, and I actually threw a drag show where it was the Purim story was reenacted and he was the host, and he is now a very popular viral sensation. And he always says, like, you gave me my first shot, and I always thought it was so special that it was like via Purim. Like, so yeah, you inspired me to like carry that tradition and like spread that joy. And I mean, with many things, but that one in particular, I definitely had fun with. And I love you and I miss you so much.
Eliza, you're hired. Eliza, be careful what you share. You're hired.
I get it from my mother. What can I say?
Diane Barstow has her hand up.
Okay, Diane.
Hi there. It's so wonderful to see you and Yen. It truly is. And you mentioned loss, and I was one of those people who suffered loss when Bob died the morning after the Passover, Temple Passover Seder, and very unexpected, tragic. And you were amazing. You really helped our family. The service was beautiful. I remember everybody sitting on our patio. You encouraged people to talk about him, and you just really helped the community circle around us, around the family, which was wonderful. And Beth Or was a family at that time to us, and I'll never forget that. So that was one of the sadder times, but you were there for us in happy times as well. And I remember so much laughter, and the Yiddishkeit that you and Yen brought to Beth Or, the emphasis on that and the classes. It was just a lot of wonderful things. And I hope you plan to come back to Miami someday on a visit. We would love to see you.
We actually,
or we could just have more virtual moments.
We can have more virtual moments, but we did have a plan that because we have always also wanted to go to Cuba, and we had this plan to come to Miami and be there long enough to actually see people and then go to Cuba. Now I don't know when that will be, but we do want to do that.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you. Marcy, yes, I see you. You can unmute.
I'm on a phone in the Oneg room, so I'm just going to take a quick little pan. I don't know if everyone can see this, but we have new furnishings.
Put your camera on, Marcy.
Oh, my camera's not on?
No.
It was, but it went off.
You have to, where it says
stop.
Okay. So while she's working on that little technical glitch.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I just want to say this is a hoot to see you, to hear everybody's stories.
I really miss you guys and think of you with nothing but love and laughter, like everybody says. I remember Rebecca as Sally Bowles at Purim, and just so much fun. We had so much fun. And I don't know if you remember that I wrote you a song to New York, New York, when you were leaving. Do you I don't know if you remember that. And you do remember?
Yes.
Okay, great, great, great. And Yen, I always think of you in the choir. So I wondered if you remembered that. And I always picture us when we were learning Baruch Hashanah, and we were always you and Jeff Tucker and we were always counting out the beats for when we came in. So I was wondering if you remembered that.
I do remember. I do remember.
Yeah, we had so much fun in that choir. It was great.
Okay, thanks, Mars.
That's
What
it. Thank
about
you.
Rob? Rob Burse, I think, wants to say something or ask something.
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Rebecca, Rabbi Rebecca, you are the most real person I've ever known. You just, it's all right there. And that's what, no matter what people's age are, teenagers, middle-aged people, older people, they all see that. There's such a transparency to that. And I got to enjoy you and Yen so many times out of the temple situation, and you were always the same person, whether you were up on the bima or not. And you were just such a wonderful part of my life. And one of the funniest things that I remember is you had been the rabbi at Beth Or just such a short amount of time. And it was coming towards the end of the service, and we had somebody had the healing list and the names for the Kaddish.
That was my interview.
They handed you the wrong list. And the guy was sitting right there.
He goes, I'm very much alive.
But how you reacted was so real, because it was actually funny that you took people from, oh my God, to just laughing with you. At just, it was just so beautiful, and just showed how real you are as a human being. And I just loved you in that moment, as I love you right now.
And giggles were a real thing. We had giggles. Just what you're doing now, could just look at you and get a case of the giggles. Just exactly what's happening.
That was absolutely precious.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing, Rob. So we'll take one or two more. Emily, you want to add something?
Hello again. I thought I would tell you that, as I'm sure you remember, Chelsea and I were the best of friends, and our friendship started in Hebrew school, and it is still one of the most important friendships in my life. And while none of my sisters or I ended up a rabbi, despite my mother's best wishes, I did officiate Chelsea's wedding last year. So
that is wonderful. Oh, that is.
Married her to her wonderful husband, Chris.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Oh, and tell her Mazel Tov. If it was a year ago, she's still a newlywed. So tell her Mazel Tov.
Yes, I asked her who's going to marry you, and she said Chris. And I was like, no, Chelsea, who's going to marry you? Who's going to do that? And she was like, oh, do you want to do it? And I was like, would I?
I could see you being perfect at that, actually.
I mean, I won't. I did the best that I could. It was quite windy, so I had to hold my dress down the whole time. But
Where are you now? Where are you living?
I live in Washington, D.C. now.
Ooh, and what are you doing?
I am a policy analyst for the Congressional Research Service, so I work for the Library of Congress.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great.
It's new. I just started 6 months ago, but I like it. I have yet to see my office, but maybe one day.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Does anybody else have any questions? And hopefully this is not oh yes, Karen, you get the last one. You have to unmute.
And then give Norma Sauce
like,
one more.
Yeah, it's not a question. I just want to share my undying love for everything that you did for us, and that hopefully it warms your heart to know how warmly you're remembered. And I totally forgot about that hot cold prayer. That was very funny. Love you both.
Thanks.
Can we let Norma
Nice.
Stiles have the last word?
Oh, please.
If Norma would like to speak, you want to unmute yourself, Norma?
Norma, unmute. You're still muted.
Robin, you can unmute her since you're the host.
No, I can't. You can ask, but you can't unmute them.
No, you can unmute everybody.
Norma, there she goes.
There you go, Norma.
Hi, Norma.
I've lost your the zooming. Okay, can you hear me?
I hear you, Norma, and
Yes.
I see you.
Okay, then never mind my picture. But I remember when you opened your home to holidays, and we came there, and it was so, well, I'm going to use a Yiddish word, gemütlich. I remember my background was Yiddishkeit, and so I felt very close to your husband, who I could speak with and remember things and remember the writers and the literature, and it was very nice.
I think about you often, Norma. It is so nice to see and hear you.
Rabbi, Norma is turning 102 and participates in all of our programming. She is an integral part. So nothing has changed on that front. She is as sharp as ever.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are blessed. We are blessed.
Rabbi Rebecca, now you have Toby, another student on.
Hi, Toby. Wow.
Okay, so it's been an hour and this has been so delightful. You are just such a joy and such a love. And now I see why everybody loves you so much. You bring such joy and heart and soul into everything, even this conversation. And Len, it was so nice to meet you as well. I am so blessed that I stand on the shoulders of such incredible rabbis, and I hope now I can now count you in as a friend of mine. And I hope that this will only be the beginning of times that not only we will be able to talk, but that you can come and share with the community. Maybe you can become a regular darshan, or maybe even teach us some Torah study from time to time, or join us in Shabbat, even if it's in the middle of the night. But we'll figure that out, because what we have in reflecting back on all those years, what we can feel and see is that you have never been far from the hearts of our Beth Or congregants. And so we hope that you will continue to remain with us. And I'm wondering, as a closing thought, if you had any words of wisdom that you would like to give to me or to our Beth Or community as we are transitioning to our 40th year and looking towards the future.
Well, I sort of feel like the end of Wizard of Oz, when she tells everybody, you've always had your wisdom. And I think seeing you all again after so long, everybody all together, I feel like what you have as Beth Or, it's not a coincidence of the name, because the light that, the Baal Shem Tov, this is something that we often say at weddings, is that the Baal Shem Tov said that everybody has their own unique light. And when a couple that's destined to be together joins each other, their light joins. So I feel like with Beth Or, that communal light shines through. And everybody that's here, everybody that I knew, I mean, individually, you're wonderful, but you're also very, very different. And who knows if you met today, everybody is very different, but together, something really special happens at Beth Or. And so I think that continuing to tap into that I would say even at a time like this, but I really think that the pandemic is teaching us that certain things are easier to do. And so I guess my word of wisdom would be is look at all the resources that are out there online now and then bring them into Beth Or. I'm going to really recommend, there's something that I've done called Project Zug, Z-U-G, where they send you a video and text, and then you get into a chavruta, into a pair, and study it together. You can also do it in small groups. And so that instead of people going all many different ways on Zoom, you can take the resources, but keep them in Beth Or and have, you know, study circles and things like that online, but with Beth Or people and with Beth Or energy. That's what, and I would join you if it's not the middle of the night. I will draw the line there. Sorry, Robin. I won't get up in the middle of the night. But
okay.
if it's another time, I'd be happy to participate. Because I really am so happy to see you all. I cannot tell you how happy it is making me to be with you all.
Wonderful. Well, if I can give you a blessing, Rabbi Rebecca, Lillian, may you continue to go from strength to strength. May you continue to spread your light and your beauty, not only in Denmark, but in our community. You have enriched us, and we pray that you will continue to find health and happiness and joy and fulfillment in your life. And we're thrilled that you're here, and we're grateful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I will just say to everybody too, from the little bit I've gotten to know Robin, you're really lucky to have her. I'm sure you know it, but she seems wonderful from our few conversations.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm lucky. I feel blessed too. Thank you for gifting it to me in some way.
Okay. Thank you all. Stay in touch, please. This was so much fun.
I'll
It's
think of you
wonderful to see you both.
Love you, Becca.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Rebecca.
Wonderful day. Wonderful. We have to do it again.
Yes,
Yep.
we do.
So good to see you again.
Robin, thank you for coordinating this. What an effort on your part. You had the right questions, the right tone.
Yeah, that was
The
great.
fact that you're doing this for the rabbis is just a phenomenal service, all of us.
Yeah, just a great idea.
Yeah, ditto, ditto, the best.
Fabulous.
Thank you, Robin.
Bye-bye.